Tostitos are the kind of chips almost everyone in the US has dipped into salsa at least once. Not just because of that signature light crunch, but because they pair perfectly with salsa, guacamole, queso, or pretty much any dip on the table. Thanks to their pure corn flavor, sturdy texture, and just right curve, each chip is designed to scoop, dip, and hold plenty of sauce without snapping. If you've ever opened a bag of Tostitos and wondered, where did these crunchy little triangles even come from? Well, welcome. Today we're sneaking inside the factory where all that crispy magic begins. And honestly, it's not really magic. It's a whole lot of machinery, noise, and corn. A lot of corn. So buckle up and let's see just how wild the process behind every bag of Tostitos really is. And why a single bag is usually enough to completely destroy your plan to just have a light snack. Today, we're in Southern California at one of Frito-Lay's major facilities where Tostitos tortilla chips are made. Here, the production lines run almost non-stop. Each week, the plant processes around 650,000 pounds, nearly 300 tons, of chips. Over a full year, output reaches roughly 40 million pounds, or about 15,000 to 20,000 tons of finished product. And to keep production at that scale, you need a steady and reliable supply of corn. That supply begins in Nebraska. There, Frito-Lay operates a dedicated corn processing facility that buys, cleans, conditions, sorts, and mills corn before sending the quality-checked product to their main manufacturing plants. The company works with about 125 local farmers, all located within a 60-mile radius, ensuring the corn supply stays consistent long before it enters the Tostitos production line. The type of corn used for Tostitos is field corn. Large, hard kernels that are high in starch with a deep golden color. When this corn is fully mature and ready for harvest, the plants look dry, dull, and almost dead. But that's exactly what you want. Harvesting too early, when the plants still hold moisture, can cause mold or spoilage during storage. The corn must be thoroughly dry to maintain long-term quality. When harvest season arrives, specialized combines get to work. They move down the rows, pulling entire stalks inside, then automatically husking, cleaning, and shelling the ears. Only the kernels are kept, and they're funneled into a large holding tank on top of the machine. These combines run non-stop and can harvest up to 50 tons of kernels per day. Once the holding tank fills up, a dedicated grain cart drives alongside the combine. Using a screw auger on the side of the harvester, the kernels are transferred by gravity into the cart. If the corn isn't unloaded in time, it can overflow and spill all over the field. After leaving the fields, truckloads of corn line up and head straight to the processing facility. Here, each load is inspected for quality before the trucks are directed to the unloading area. Every truck drops roughly 50,000 pounds of corn into the plant's receiving system. Once unloaded, the corn moves through a network of pipes and is carried to the drying system. At this stage, the kernels are lifted to the top of 4 large dryers. From there, the corn flows down into the center of each machine, where hot air is pulled through the grain to dry it and stabilize the moisture level. When drying is complete, the corn is transported to the storage area. The facility uses tall silos, about 4 stories high, with a combined capacity of up to 270 tons. Each individual silo can hold around 200,000 pounds of corn, ensuring a steady year-round supply of raw material for the plant. Once the silos are filled, an automated control system continuously monitors moisture at multiple points inside. Depending on real-time weather conditions, the system adjusts airflow automatically. If the outside air becomes humid or there's light rain, ventilation fans kick on to keep the environment inside dry. The goal is to maintain moisture at roughly 14%, the ideal level to prevent mold growth and preserve kernel quality. Thanks to this tight environmental control, The corn can be safely stored in the silos for 4 to 5 years, while still retaining its freshness and original quality. When a production order comes in from Frito-Lay's scheduling team, the process begins with selecting and cleaning the raw ingredients. Only high-quality corn kernels are fed into a sealed conveyance system that moves them through a network of pipes toward advanced sorting machines. Here, each kernel is evaluated based on size, shape, color, and cleanliness. Strong air jets remove foreign material, such as leftover pieces of cob from harvest. Vibrating screens also filter out undersized kernels, dust, and even tiny glass fragments that may have been picked up in the field. At this stage, any kernels that don't meet standards, too light, too small, or visibly defective, move across a gravity separator table. Material that isn't suitable for human food is diverted into a separate holding area and later sent to facilities that produce livestock feed. Only the kernels that pass inspection move on to the sampling step. Here, technicians check kernel size, freshness, and hardness to ensure every production batch delivers consistent flavor and quality. After sampling, the corn is packed into large super sacks, each holding about 2,000 pounds, and then transported by truck to the Frito-Lay manufacturing plant for processing. The first step in the corn cooking line begins when workers hook each super sack and position it above the feed hopper. Once the bag is opened, an automatic conveyor system pulls each batch of corn into the cooking tank. Every Tostitos chip starts with whole kernel corn. From here, the corn is carried along a conveyor and sent directly into the cooker, a steam-jacketed kettle. Inside, each batch cooks for about 30 minutes before moving into holding tanks. At this stage, a key ingredient is added: calcium hydroxide. This helps break down the outer shell of the kernel, improves cooking efficiency, and is essential to the traditional processing method known as nixtamalization. Each kettle holds roughly 660 pounds of corn along with 50 gallons of water, and the mixture is kept just below boiling, around 180 degrees Fahrenheit. The goal is to loosen the kernel structure and soften the corn so it cooks evenly and consistently. During this step, the tough outer pericarp, the protective skin of the corn kernel, must be removed. Eliminating this layer ensures even cooking and produces a smooth, uniform masa, which is crucial for the grinding stage that follows. To finish the cooking cycle, cold water is added to halt the process and bring the temperature back down to ambient levels. Only then can the corn move on to the next stage of processing. After cooking, the corn is transferred into large soaking tanks. Each tank is filled to a predetermined level, monitored by calibrated gauges. Here, the corn soaks for 4 to 6 hours, allowing it to absorb water and soften even further. Every tank is clearly labeled with the cooking start time, the transfer to soak time, and the specific color profile of that batch of corn. When the soaking period ends, the soak water is drained away. Along with the softened kernels, you can easily see a residue coating the sides of the tank. This is the loosened pericarp and outer layers of the corn that detached during cooking. Next, a pump pushes the hydrated corn through a series of pipes to the next stage. A filtering system removes excess water and retains the softened kernels, which now have a moisture content of about 45%. Because the cooking process removes the outer hull and other waste material, the usable yield at this stage is roughly 70 to 75% of the original weight. From the soaking tank, the corn is transferred into a rotating drum, also known as a tumbler. Since calcium hydroxide was added during cooking to help break down the kernel structure, this washing step removes any remaining lime and fully separates the outer hull, the pericarp. Inside the washer, the drum rotates while a constant spray of water agitates and rinses the kernels, ensuring every piece of corn is thoroughly cleaned. After the washing process is complete, the corn drops onto a conveyor and moves into the blending area. Here, a small amount of sweet corn is added to enhance aroma and improve the elasticity of the masa, though the bulk of the mixture is still made from field corn. From the conveyor, the corn blend is carried up through a feeder system and into the grinder. Inside this machine are pairs of grinding stones, essentially millions of tiny mineral particles fused together to create two abrasive surfaces. These stones are positioned with a narrow gap between them and rotate in opposite directions. Running at about 750 revolutions per minute, they crush and shear the kernels into a moist dough known as masa. The fineness or coarseness of the masa can be adjusted depending on production requirements. This is done by tightening or widening the gap between the stones, which determines the thickness, texture, and final consistency of the masa before it moves on to the forming stage. To keep the masa perfectly consistent, the dough is divided into several small compartments before entering the line. This helps maintain an even flow and prevents thick or thin spots. That's why you'll never find a Tostitos chip that's too thick or too flimsy in your bag. The masa is then lifted onto an overhead conveyor and sent into the pre-sheeter, a machine that works much like rolling cookie dough at home. It presses the masa into a sheet with a precise thickness before it moves into the cutting stage. Right below the pair of rollers is the cutter. Since this line is producing triangle-shaped chips, the cutting drum runs along the conveyor and stamps out perfectly shaped Tostitos as the masa sheet passes through. Beyond the standard triangle cut, the line can be reconfigured simply by swapping out the cutting drum. These drums are manufactured with different die patterns, allowing the plant to produce oval chips, square chips, mini triangles, or even round tortilla chips, depending on the product. Above the line, employees conduct quality checks. They pull samples from both the center and the edges of the conveyor, select 10 chips, and weigh them. The goal is to ensure each piece falls within the target weight range. If a chip weighs more than the approved limit, the bag could end up with fewer chips than intended. On the other hand, if the chips are too light, the bag may contain more chips than expected or fail to meet the exact weight printed on the package. And even though the process looks highly organized and streamlined, there's always a small amount of excess dough. But nothing goes to waste. The leftover masa is sent straight back to the mixer to start the cycle all over again. After being cut into shape, the masa pieces move directly into an oven set to around 419 degrees Fahrenheit. Here, they bake for only about 30 seconds before exiting on the other side. This quick bake helps the chips start to crisp on the surface and develop their signature color, while also reducing the frying time needed later. As they leave the oven, the Tostitos pieces are carried onto a slow-moving conveyor to gradually cool down. This cooling phase lasts roughly 5 minutes, allowing excess moisture to escape and stabilizing the surface of the chips before they enter the fryer. This is also when quality control staff closely monitor the product. They watch for any pieces that are burnt or poorly formed, because a scorched Tostitos chip isn't exactly ideal for scooping up salsa. After leaving the cooling conveyor, the Tostitos pieces head straight into the fryer. The oil is kept between 350 and 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and the chips fry for about 60 seconds. The goal is to bring their moisture content down to around 1%, which fully cooks the chips and gives them the slight signature curl that Tostitos are known for. When the chips come out of the fryer, they may look a bit shiny or wet, but that's not water. It's excess oil being removed. A vibrating conveyor underneath shakes off the oil, working much like a giant industrial version of blotting food with a paper towel. At this point, the chips have their final shape, but not their flavor. Freshly fried Tostitos are actually unseasoned. They'll need to pass through the next stations to be salted and get the familiar taste everyone recognizes. While many other chips are coated with bold seasonings, chili lime, nacho cheese, even dill pickle, Tostitos Original follows a completely different philosophy. This product line is all about pure corn flavor, a light, crisp texture, and the ability to pair perfectly with salsa, guacamole, or queso without overpowering anything. For that reason, the flavoring process for Tostitos Original is far simpler than for heavily seasoned chips. After frying, the chips enter a rotating mixing drum, a tumbler. Above it, ultra-fine salt is fed through a delivery tube and sprinkled evenly into the drum while the chips are still hot. Thanks to the constant tumbling motion, the salt naturally adheres to the chip surfaces without the need for extra oil. Only a very small amount of salt is used, about 1 to 2% of the finished product's weight. This thin coating is just enough to highlight the corn flavor without making the chips overly salty. The result is a Tostitos chip that stays light, crisp, and deeply corn-forward, exactly as it was designed to be. Once the salting step is finished, the chips are ready to be packaged. They're carried up a conveyor to a 14-head weighing machine. Here, each head accurately measures out a precise portion of chips, and on a programmed timing cycle, each batch is released at just the right moment to drop into an open bag below. In this case, each bag holds 6 ounces of Tostitos. When the correct amount of chips has been dispensed, the bag moves to the sealing unit, where the top is heat-sealed shut. The finished bags then travel down the line to the case packing area. There, an automated system loads them into cardboard cartons and seals the boxes, before workers stack them on pallets to get them ready for shipping. The packed cases are stored temporarily in the plant's warehouse, waiting to be loaded onto trucks and sent to distribution centers. From there, they're shipped out to supermarkets and grocery stores all across the country. So the next time you scoop up a handful of Tostitos into your favorite salsa, take a second to think about the people and machines that made sure every chip is just the right size for you. Now it's your turn. How many kernels of corn do you think it takes to fill one bag of Tostitos? Drop your guess in the comments. And we'll be back with the answer in a future episode of Food Tech Today.